And welcome to this brief overview about how to write research proposals. I'm going to situate this discussion in the context of a research proposal outline where I sprinkle a few examples in throughout. So there are two really big sections of a research proposal. The first is your background section. And this background section, which I'm highlighting now, has a couple of main headings within it. The first major heading is the context of the problem or description of the problem. This is a brief section where you cite literature in a way that helps to describe the context and explain the problem you're interested in studying. So a couple of examples might be something that I studied in my research around the way that we give graded feedback to students seems to be demotivating some of them. To shift this into a more health science area, you could maybe describe how the way we're teaching practice skills in pharmacy education, nursing education, dentistry education, physician education, any of the health sciences is not authentic. Another example, which I'm stealing from one of our students, is this idea of ensuring high quality interprofessional learning in experiential placements is seeming difficult in rural settings. Finally, I'll close with another broader one. An example of a problem you might describe would be, the fact that virtual interactions with patients and other healthcare professionals are becoming far more commonplace, but health science educational programs have yet to really adapt to teach these skills. So a context of the problem section, which, might be a page, of the actual background section, will end with a statement of purpose where you conclude with the idea of what the bigger purpose of your research will be. So, for example, you may state that the purpose of this study is to examine the relationship between how we provide feedback and student motivation in the context of pharmacy education. Or it might be something along the lines of wanting to explore students' experiences with interprofessional learning in rural settings, just to really more take a qualitative approach and try to, for the first time, document what is happening for students in interprofessional learning in rural settings. So the context of the problem is different from the detailed literature review in the sense that you're going to be citing research here, but you're not going to be critically reviewing it. You're really just citing research to back up any claims you make about the fact that there is a problem at all. And then in the literature review section, you're going to be citing research to do both things. You're going to be citing research to back up claims, but also to potentially critique it as a basis to justify further research or to identify specific research questions. So this literature review section is the heart of the background of a research proposal, and it contains topical subheadings that move from broad to specific. So in this example, which builds off of some of the research I've done, the first topic covered is a general topic of how fairness beliefs have been shown to be beneficial, and then their relationship to motivation to pursue long-term goals, and then finally the role of being socially disadvantaged versus advantaged on this relationship between beliefs and motivation. So this is all very, broad in the sense that it might not even be education specific. It's just sort of introducing the big concepts that are at play and how we understand that they're related to each other. Then I shifted to something that was more specific and about school, having established that there's this relationship and that it's been studied and there's signs that social disadvantage is playing an important role. What might be how this would play out in schools? So talking about features or characteristics of school settings that might impact students' fairness beliefs or justice beliefs, which ultimately led me to talking about the way we give feedback as a really important factor in affecting student beliefs. The sort of end of the main literature review section, after you've done all of these very specific and unique subheadings, is a generic summary and synthesis section where you concisely restate the main takeaways, the rationales, and the research questions themselves, as well as hypotheses for quantitative research. The qualitative research literature review will be very similar. There's no real difference in the way that you would look at the literature and describe it. You just ultimately wouldn't end up with a hypothesis at the end. So that's the first big part of a research proposal, the background section. It has two major parts: the context of the problem, which is a shorter section, and then the literature review itself, which is the bigger section. Then we move into the generic part two of a research proposal, which is the methods section. And in this section, you're going to describe your research design. So in a quantitative research, you're going to say, is it an experiment? Is it quasi-experimental? Is it observational? Is it a survey design? Is it a very descriptive, research in the sense that you're going to be reporting statistics, general statistics? So you would basically label the research design and indicate any important variables that are going to be studied as a part of that research design. From a qualitative perspective, the research design, you'll be introducing the concepts of either case study, ethnography, qualitative descriptive. You're going to just essentially label the design that's going to be used to answer the questions and give a couple of sentences to explain how that methodology will be applied to your study. Then you get into much more specifics, starting with a description of participants. From a quantitative research perspective, you're going to talk about sampling and how you're going to ensure representativeness, and issues of ensuring participants have informed consent. From a qualitative perspective, you're going to explain how the people who will be involved in your study are appropriate in the sense that they have experienced the phenomenon of interest, and then how you're going to access them and how you're going to involve them in your work. The materials and measures section, from a quantitative perspective, you're going to be really just giving descriptions of the measures that are involved. If you have a learning instrument, a test, or if you have a motivation instrument, or any kind of personality measure, any kind of measures that you're using, you're going to label them, explain what they measure, and then cite any research or evidence that backs up their validity and reliability. In the qualitative perspective, you're more going to be describing protocols, interview protocols, observation protocols for how you're going to instruct, say, your research assistants to collect data while they're observing people do certain things. But basically, it's all of the protocols about how you're going to collect the data. Then we shift into the specific procedures or the recipe or the step-by-step instructions of how the study will be conducted. And finally, we close with an analysis section where you just explain how the data will be analyzed. And for the purposes of our course, we just want you to be very general at this point. So if you've got a quantitative study, you may mention, you'll be looking at the descriptive statistics if it's just a straightforward descriptive study. Or if it's an experiment, you might say you're going to be comparing the means. Or if it's just a observational study, you might talk about correlations. Or maybe if you're really sort of pushing it, you might say regression. But just to give a sense that you understand that how the type of data you've collected needs to be analyzed. The same thing goes for qualitative. So if you've got interviews, how are you going to do any coding? What type of analysis approach might be necessary? Thematic analysis, segmenting and coding type analysis. And you'll just give a sense that, you understand, given the data that you have, what type of general analytic approach is necessary. Now, not all research proposals require this, but for our course we do. We want you to start or to think about the significance of the proposal that you're suggesting. And the first thing from a significant standpoint is, how does this research study contribute to the broader theoretical understanding of the concepts being studied? So how does it add to the literature and expand our understanding in a theoretical way? And then the second thing is in terms of practicality. So how will the research study add, and the results maybe be useful for the educational practitioner, the students that are involved, and then also just broader society or the professionals, the healthcare professionals involved. So that's the sort of general structure and overview of what's involved in a research proposal. Just to quickly recap, 2 big sections: background section, which is where you do your major literature review. You start with the context of the problem, you dig in and you identify your research questions. Then you do second big section, the methods section, which includes research design, participants, materials and measures, procedures, analysis, and then significance. So good luck.